When recounting the details of Sarah Scott, the deceased, the judge told the court that she was pregnant, but added the caveat that I mention this as a circumstance rather to be lamented than as a matter for your consideration. The fact that she was with child is irrelevant, as it has no bearing on the case. This moral point could only be ignored in light of a more important moral point, the preservation of order. William Stevenson was a prison guard and Sarah Scott was a prisoner, and she was killed when the prisoners were on the brink of rioting. That is the focus of the trial, not to whether or not he did murder her, but to whether or not the murder was deserved. The judge, when addressing the jury, is more concerned with moral reformation and proper conduct than he is with the guilt of the prisoner. The governor of this jail, for the safety of that prison over which he presided, thought it imprudent and improper to let these women out in the usual course of indulgence that had been observed to them before, and he had two objects in view, the one safety, the other reformation. He might think that by a strict and rigid confinement, he might bring these women to a state of conduct and regularity. Because this happened in a prison and the victim herself was guilty, this trial is more about the stability of the 18th century legal system and ways to improve those within it than anything else. Even after the fact, after Scott has been killed, it is still necessary to speak of her and her fellow prisoners' possible moral improvement. A turnkey at the prison, John Woodward's testimony makes this position easier to take. After the women had been locked out of their usual gathering place, he speaks of how they began to blaspheme, and swear that they would have the gate down as usual, and how they pulled parts of the wall down and used the stones as projectiles. The disorder and fear of disorder is the focus of the trial. Charles Price, a servant in the prison, describes the disorder and goes a step forward, and concludes that the prison was in danger. When asked about it, he says that the prison was exceedingly in danger, in great danger, when they were heaving stones fit to knock our brains out. Perhaps most illuminating is how he answers when asked if he would have shot at the prisoners. I would. The fact that this is even a question, too, is illuminating. The court is trying to ascertain, not whether or not Price saw something that could be useful towards convicting the prisoner, but whether or not he would have done the same. There is a preoccupation with moral righteousness that is typical of the 18th century court. The undertones of morality are evident in the court's questions. When questioning Thomas Jones, who was a prisoner for assault before being released, the court concludes that Usyk was so bad a fellow that the keeper himself got some of his own people to bail you, to get rid of you, and in order that you might not corrupt the whole jail, due to the nature of the murder. The entire trial is one of moral justification and questioning. The court questions whether or not the women abused the turnkeys. They abused the turnkeys, and used them extremely ill. Which is indicative of an agenda. The guilt of the prisoner is a foregone conclusion, but instead of convicting him, the court empathizes with him, and finds a way to justify his actions. The judge's final speech is also indicative of a belief in moral justification. I for one am of opinion, in point of law, that they had a right to resort to this extremity. I never had a doubt of it in my life. If that were an actual felony is committed, or upon the point of being committed, persons are authorized by law to repress that by every possible means. It seems to me there is no grounds for proceeding further. The crime of disobeying and disrespecting the legal system is enough to overshadow the lesser crime of correcting this disrespect. The recorder of the City of London, who happened to be at the trial, was called upon and agreed with the judge. A jailer has a right to repress tumults and disorders in that jail. In this case, the prisoner was acquitted because he was thought to have done the right thing.